Are you a parent in the Pokemon world and your child is gonna turn 10 very soon? If yes, then this video is for you, because what kind of irresponsible parent would let their 10-year-old child leave the house without telling them which starter Pokemon might cause some incidents in their journey? This is why I'm here, to rank every single starter Pokemon based on how safe it would be to hand them to a 10-year-old, going from safest to deadliest. And before I start, this is all just my opinion. So without any further ado, let's begin. At last place we got to no one's surprise Chikorita. However, it is not alone, as it is tied with Sprigatito. 8 gens apart from each other, and yet these two grass starters managed to rank at rock bottom. These Pokemon's dex entries are pretty similar, with practically all of them talking about how they release a calming fragrance that soothes those around them. I honestly don't think these two could harm a 10-year-old that easily. Well, maybe Sprigatito, if it feels like scratching its trainer. It is a cat after all. I never expected Turtwig to rank high, which is nothing for it to be ashamed of. Think of Turtwig in 25th place like a shining light in darkness, because I've yet to meet a single person who dislikes this little boy. The only reason it's low in the deadliness ranking is because its dex entries only talk about it doing photosynthesis and having soil on its shell. So Turtwig is just a chill guy. No issues whatsoever. Hailing once again from Sinnoh, the 24th spot is filled by Piplup. Honestly, the Pokédex isn't really being helpful to the little guy, at all. All it talks about is that it is so proud that it is hard to bond with. By itself, this isn't deadly, but I don't know, maybe it could retaliate against a loving trainer and just start spamming Bubble Beam on their face. That is, if it manages to stay on its legs. Poor Piplup. Snivy is in a similar spot to Piplup, in which its dex entries don't necessarily say anything that could be dangerous, but its disposition could create problems for fresh new trainers. Its Pokemon Black dex entry says that when exposed to lots of sunlight, its movements are swifter, which could lead to its trainer getting tired following it if it runs away for some reason, making the trainer trip, fall, and scrape their knee or something. Although I do acknowledge that falling would be more of the trainer's fault than Snivy's. The second Paldean starter on this list is Quaxly, who is actually the first one on this list whose dex entry actually has some danger to it, even if it's small. Its Pokemon Violet dex entry states that it uses its strong legs to swim, which means that if it kicked you, it would probably hurt. However, have you looked at Quaxly? The only reason it didn't rank higher is because I don't think a duck's kick would hurt that much, and also, look at him. There's no way it reaches you before you can dodge its attack. It might be weird to see arguably the second most popular starter behind Charmander so low, but I have a good reason. Froakie's dex entries don't talk about it attacking anyone or its own strength. However, the bubbles on its back could be dangerous. As shown in the anime, Froakie's bubbles are super sticky, so if a kid gets their hands stuck on a tree with one of these bubbles, it's gonna take a while to get them off. If this happens in a populated area, there's not much problem because someone's gonna go help out the kid, but if it's in the woods, nothing is standing in the way of an Ursaring making that 10-year-old its next meal. In the 20th spot, we got Sobble. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can this little thing be dangerous besides making its trainer look frantically for it when it turns invisible? Well, according to its Pokemon Sword dex entry, Sobble steers back the chemical punch of 100 onions, making it so that you're gonna have to cry if it cries around you, which would cause no injuries. However, crying that much for a long time could make your eyes dehydrated, which could lead to swollen eyes, which can generate eyesight problems that can last for the rest of the kid's life. So yeah, Sobble creates way more long-term problems than actual injuries. From this point on, the dex entries start actually showing some danger, so I can be less speculative. So without any further ado, in 19th place, we got another Galar starter, Grookey. You might be wondering, what can this little guy do? Poke you with a stick. But seriously, that could hurt. According to its Pokemon Shield entry, it attacks with rapid beats of its stick, meaning that you would get poked multiple times. Also, if Grookey's feeling a little bit devious, it could aim for your eye, and that's not cool at all, and it's probably gonna hurt. Popplio isn't really a Pokemon I was expecting to see this high. However, its Dex entry saved it from being placed lower. Its Pokemon Sword Dex entry states that the sheer force of its bubbles popping is what deals damage to its opponents. This shows that Popplio's bubbles are no joke at all, because if they're strong enough to damage someone, then they must actually hurt. And if you know how bubbles work, which if you don't, I mean, what's wrong with you? They're bubbles. They burst in all directions, meaning that even if Popplio didn't intend for you to be its target, you would be caught in its attack. Treecko has a thick tail, and Treecko hits with its big tail, and the big tail hurts. That's it. Nah, just kidding. It's true that Treecko's tail could cause some injuries, but Treecko is a very determined Pokemon. According to its Pokemon Sapphire Dex entry, if Treecko were to be faced by a bigger foe, it would glare back at that Pokemon and not concede an inch of ground. This means that if its trainer were to get in an argument with it, it would be ready to throw hands. Or in Treecko's case, throw tails, I guess. Notice how there haven't been any fire types thus far? Well, that's about to change, because in the 16th spot we have Litten. Naturally, no fire type starter would rank low because, you know, fire. But the reason I decided to have Litten placed lower than the other ones is because its Dex entries aren't all that threatening. Its Pokemon Shield entry states that trying to pet Litten before it trusts you would result in a nasty scratch, which would hurt. And besides that, there's the very likely eventual fire it could spit at you, but that's a risk with any fire Pokemon, to be honest. Also, Litten's Ultra Moon Dex entry says that it sets itself on fire, so I'd say this is the fire starter that poses the least risk. It's setting fire on itself, not you. With back-to-back fire starters, our second of the list is Tepig. Unlike Litten, who was a chill Pokemon that wants nothing to do with you, Tepig is a happy little roasted ham that will most likely want affection. However, that affection could cause some burns. Its Black 2 and White 2 Dex entries state that before eating berries, it roasts them, but if it gets excited, it could burn them to a crisp. So imagine you are feeding your Tepig some berries, and before you know it, your hand gets burned along with those berries. Yeah, it wouldn't be pleasant. Besides that, go for it. Tepig is another good boy, just like Turtwig. Our first Kanto starter of the list is Squirtle, placing at a respectable 14th place. If you're a fan of destruction. The little turtle's Dex entries don't really mention it being aggressive, but they do talk about its shell. There are countless examples of this, so to name one. Its Pokemon Silver Dex entry says that if Squirtle's shell is poked, it will bounce back off. This means that if you were to make Squirtle mad, it could hide in its shell and hit you, which could break some bones, to be honest. Besides that, its Red and Blue Dex entries state that it powerfully sprays foam from its mouth, so the little guy has many ways of hurting a 10-year-old. When you first looked at Fuecoco, did you think it would be a threat to anything other than itself? Me neither. This little guy looks like its brain is running on one brain cell in pure chaotic energy. It would probably trip down a set of stairs rather than try to roast you alive. But this is still a fire type, meaning that it can harm you easily. Its Pokemon Violet Dex entry states that due to its small fire sac, there's always energy leaking out, that being its little hair. I don't think I need to explain why fire leaking out of something is dangerous, so let's move on to the 12th spot. Here it is, Pokemon number 1, 12 positions behind first place. Don't get me wrong, Bulbasaur is still the third deadliest grass type starter, but when it comes to being a grass type, there's only so much you can do in terms of being a threat. Even Bulbasaur's Dex entries are tame, none of them talk about anything aggressive, which would place it very low on this list. Thankfully for Bulbasaur, it gets a very deadly help in its secondary typing, Poison. Similarly to the fire types, simply being part poison type, Bulbasaur can be a threat at any moment, being able to poison anyone, and with a person's immune system peaking only around puberty, it's safe to assume that a 10-year-old wouldn't be one that could handle the poison that Bulbasaur is able to deliver. At 11th place, we got the fan favorite Charmander, which I thought would place higher, to be honest. When I looked at its Dex entries, none of them were truly that menacing. Its Ruby and Sapphire dex entries state that if it becomes enraged, its flame burns fiercely, but that's it. Don't get me wrong though, Charmander is still a fire type and could roast you with ease. However, it has a fatal weakness. Its Fire Red dex entry states that if its flame were to go out, its life would end, meaning that all you gotta do is grab a water bucket and you're good to go. No need to worry about Charmander. We have finally reached the top 10 deadliest starter Pokemon, and what better way to start it than with the best water starter, Oshawott. Yes, Oshawott is the best, I will not be discussing this. As for its deadliness, Oshawott has access to a very handy tool when it comes to unaliving people, especially 10-year-olds, its shell. Its Pokemon White dex entry states that its shell, which is called a Scalchop by the way, can be detached and used as a blade. Not only that, but its Legends Arceus dex entry says that it uses the Scalchop to cut down its foes. This means that if that Scalchop can cut down Pokemon, it would be no issue for Oshawott to use it to cut down a human. With how Rowlet has been portrayed in the Pokemon media up to this point, I would be surprised if anyone considered it to be dangerous. But don't let this sleepy round boy fool you, cause this owl can do some serious damage. Its Ultra Sun dex entry says that it can shoot its feathers that are as sharp as blades and attack with formidable kicks. First of all, if Rowlet were to kick someone with those talons, it would not only hurt, but scratch the person. Second, if you try to run away, it will just shoot its feathers that can easily cut you. Basically, Rowlet is Oshawott with flight and ranged blades. Absolutely not something safe for a 10-year-old. Scorbunny doesn't feel like a powerful Pokemon when you look at it. Even as a fire type, it looks the least fire type of the starters. So what is the differential of Scorbunny? What does it bring to the table in terms of destructiveness? Well, its Pokemon Shield dex entry says that Scorbunny has special pads on the backs of its feet and on its nose, and that these pads generate tremendous heat. This can actually be seen in the review trailer for Sword and Shield, where Scorbunny burns a patch of grass when running. This means that if Scorbunny were to pick a fight with its trainer, the heat exposed from its pads could lead to some mild yet very inconvenient burns for whatever person is Scorbunny's trainer. In the 7th spot, we have Chimchar, who can be very lethal, but most likely won't be. Chimchar is scoring high in this list purely due to a what-if scenario, but I still think it counts. Its Pokemon Pearl dex entry states that the fire in its rear is fueled by gas and can be put out even by rain, meaning that Chimchar is Charmander without the risk of being exposed to rain. This makes sense since gas fires can't be put out with water, so Chimchar is just built different than other fire starters. However, this fire most likely won't be a problem because its Platinum dex entry says that before going to sleep, it extinguishes the flame on its tail to prevent fires. This goes to show that Chimchar, if it were to let itself go loose, it could just burn you with a fire that's really hot, but it is mindful enough not to make a mess like a forest fire or things of the sort, which means that it probably isn't going to try and use flamethrower on you for any stupid reason. And the crown of deadliest grass starter goes to Chespin. Honestly, not what I was expecting. But again, it's not like the others were much competition to the little guy. You might not think much of Chespin, especially when its evolution looks like this. But I can assure you, it is scarily powerful. Chespin's Pokemon X and Omega Ruby dex entries state that its squills can become so hard and sharp that they can pierce rocks. Not only that, but what's even crazier is that according to its Pokemon Y and Alpha Sapphire dex entries, it can withstand a direct hit from a truck and not even be fazed by it. I admit that the dex entries are mentioning Chespin's resistance rather than its own power, but imagine if it decides to headbutt you. Yeah, that's probably gonna cause some serious injuries and broken bones. We've made it to the top 5, and what better way to start her off than with little old Mudkip. If you thought Chespin was impressive, wait until you hear what this little blue axolotl can do. First of all, its Pokemon Emerald dex entry says that it can lift boulders, which for a Pokemon Mudkip's size is crazy. What's even crazier is that according to Mudkip's Sapphire Dex entry, it has enough power to crush rocks bigger than itself. So you're telling me that this blue thing is just that strong in its first stage? I really wasn't expecting that. Now imagine if it decides to hit its trainer. That 10-year-old is gonna have some broken bones and probably be launched into the air. No doubt about it. In 4th place, I have decided to put Cyndaquil. Not for it being exceptionally strong, but because of how unstable it is. To start this off, let's look at its Pokemon Silver Dex entry. It states that if Cyndaquil gets angry or surprised, it will shoot out flames from its back. Also, its Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum Dex entries say that if it is startled, the flames would burn vigorously. These entries show how having a Cyndaquil would be very challenging, as any unpredictability could cause it to shoot its flames and accidentally hit its trainer. Not only that, but what if the trainer decides to go pet Cyndaquil while it is resting? The Cyndaquil is probably gonna get scared and burn that trainer. And that burn is probably gonna hurt, as its Legends Arceus Dex entry says that it has tremendous firepower. Yeah, so don't mess with Cyndaquil, just leave it alone. I think it comes as no surprise that the best Johto starter is the deadliest. Totodile may not be a fire type, but he most certainly can be dangerous like one. This little croc is dangerous by itself for being, you know, a crocodile, but not only that, all of its Dex entries describe how dangerous it is. For example, Totodile's Gold and Silver Dex entries state that its well-developed jaws are powerful and capable of crushing anything. Even its trainer must be careful. And that it is small but rough and tough. It won't hesitate to take a bite out of anything that moves. This shows how Totodile is quite literally a force to be reckoned with. It needs to be watched at all times, its trainer is always in danger of being bit, and the bite is described to be able to crush anything, which is such a vague description that I wouldn't want to risk being near Totodile when it's hungry. If this croc decides to bite its trainer, that trainer is most certainly losing a hand or more limbs. Also, I find it quite funny that both Totodile and Cyndaquil are in the top 4 while Chikorita is rotting in last place, which really goes to show who are the ones carrying the Johto starter selection. While making my research for this video, I knew I'd be shocked with something. I just didn't expect that something to be finicking out of both starters to make it to 2nd place. Besides the obvious fire typing, this thing's Pokemon X and Omega Ruby Dex entries state that it can produce air that's more than 390 degrees Fahrenheit from its ears. That's around 200 degrees Celsius, which is as hot as the inside of an oven. On paper, that doesn't sound that bad, but imagine being hit by air as hot as that. This could cause 3rd-degree burns and most likely respiratory issues if the air is inhaled. Also, according to those same Dex entries, when finicking it's a twig, it gets more energy, meaning that this thing is a forest fire machine. It just eats the wood that it burns and keep burning more wood. So not only can this thing burn its trainer, but it can also set the environment where that trainer is on fire, as long as it can munch on some twigs. We finally made it. Number 1. If you've been following closely with what I've been saying, then you already know what starter is the deadliest. So, without any further ado, it is with great pride that I announce that the number 1 Pokemon of this list is Chicken Little. Yeah, it's Torchic. Jokes aside, I think it was safe to assume that the deadliest starter would be a fire type. But what I did not expect was that Torchic would be the worst of them all. Sure, Blaziken is awesome, but what can Torchic do that's so lethal? Well, the little dude can, according to its Pokemon Ruby Dex entry, breathe fire of over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, including fireballs that leave the foe scorched black. This is more than 980 degrees Celsius and makes Fennekin's already deadly fire seem as strong as a lighter. Torchic's fire is equivalent to industrial level heat, meaning that it is as hot as the melting point of copper alloys. Now imagine if a Torchic decides to shoot a fireball towards its trainer or misses an attack. There's no coming back from this. that 10-year-old is melting on the spot. It's over for them. And it's all because of Chicken Little. Dorchick Jockey. So, what did we learn today? That if you want your 10-year-old to have the safest journey possible, the starter trio for you is Chikorita or Sprigatito, Litten, and Piplup. However, if you don't really care for your 10-year-old and just want him out of the house, just give him either Chespin, Torchic, or Totodile. That's it for this video. Please let me know if you liked my ranking and if you agree with my placements. Also, I did some editing with the audio, so it should be a bit louder. Anyways, it was a pleasure to be here, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.